Start. Hey there. I pinned this video. Welcome back to the Monday 5:30 mindfulness meditation half hour. My name's Casey. Always great to see you. I saw a bumper sticker a while back. It said, "I'd rather be here now." I'd rather be here now. For those of you maybe a little unfamiliar with bumper sticker culture, there's a whole bunch of bumper stickers that say, "I'd rather be fishing." I'd rather be at Disneyland, or I'd rather be fill in the blank. Some are pretty clever, but all of them, it's the sentiment that they would rather be somewhere else doing something that they find more enjoyable. And this bumper sticker said, "I would rather be here now." And I thought, wow, that's really great, actually. And that's what meditation teaches us to do. We sit down and we fully experience the present moment. It's a very immersive, experiential practice, one that the mind has a hard time comprehending. Unfortunately, the mind doesn't need to fully understand meditation or the practice, because in Buddhist psychology, at least, the mind is just one of the senses. We get the taste, touch, feel, hear, scent, and the mind is the sixth sense. Not like the movie, but in Buddhist psychology, the mind is just another sensor. We could think of it as a lens that we view our world through. And total understanding of the present moment may never be fully comprehended on the level of the mind, and that's okay, because the mind is in narrative mode. That's what the mind does. It tells stories. It likes to situate itself within the context of the past and the future. And the present is kind of like a means to an end with our mind. And that's not a bad thing, unless we don't realize that. And we're living through our mind, which is to say, we're living in the narrative mode, and there's all that drama and a very distorted sense of what is true, a very distorted sense of reality, of our true nature. Um, Meditation is a practice that brings us beyond the limitations of the conceptual barriers of our mind. The mind is great. We don't have to treat it like an enemy. We don't have to turn it off. We just put our focus elsewhere, and that is in our breath. That is with whatever is happening in the present moment. I'd rather be here now. Um, Many people find the present moment to be uncomfortable. Again, if you're trying to understand it through the mind, it might take you a long, long time, and you may never really get it in a way that resonates or truly deepens your understanding. But the practice of meditation is that we just sit in the present moment and we continue to bring our awareness back to it. Whatever's happening, we bring our awareness back. And when we meditate, we focus on what is. Everything outside of the practice is what if. It's speculative. In meditation, we're thinking or noticing rather what we're thinking in the moment, what is happening right now. We're breathing, we're thinking, we're meditating, we're being here. Everything outside of the present moment is what if. And so notice where your mind is. Again, like I was noting in the scientific studies that have shown the sense of self operates in two modes, or two styles, which is narrative and experiential. When we meditate, it's experiential. We're fully immersed, and when the mind is telling stories, that's what ifs. So just like we can think, am I in narrative mode right now? Am I more identified with my mind in a narrative way, or am I more grounded in the experiential practice, which is being here now, right? Which is focusing on what is instead of what ifs. Because what ifs, I mean, that's an endless road, as we know. The mind always comes up with other things to be anxious about, or for other things to be engaged with at a mental level. And that can be a lot of fun. Again, that's the idea is not to do away with the mind. The idea is to utilize the mind in a way that it is a very effective and healthy tool for us to gain a better, deeper, holistic understanding of our surroundings. What is versus what ifs. If you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about what if. If you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about what if, because according to some theories, every time you remember a particular memory, you distort it a little bit more each and every time. And so you can never really, in this theory at least, you can never really remember something completely or fully, or correctly all the way. So, and whether or not that's true, the past is speculative. We understand it from where we are now, but that's not to say that in 5 or 10 years, just as an example, we would understand our past in a very different way through a very different kind of understanding. That's what time does. So, it can be uncomfortable to focus on what is because we're so used to focusing on what ifs. However, with enough practice, we start to realize that actually the feeling of uncomfortable anxiety occurs when we think of what ifs, when our mind is with the what ifs, and we tend to get a sense of grounding and a kind of reset button when we focus on what is, when we meditate. My meditations lately have been so nice. It's been super grounded, super effortless. Thoughts come and go. There's no turbulence, and it's been really, really nice. Is it going to stay that way forever? No. Would I like it to stay that way forever? Absolutely not. That would be incredibly boring, incredibly predictable. In yoga classes, I've often said if you find yourself getting annoyed that you're falling out of balance, that you can't hold a pose for very long, just imagine what it would be like if you nailed every single yoga pose every single time. It would be stupid. There'd be no reason to practice. The reason why we practice is because we don't know what's going to happen. And I'm speaking of yoga and meditation in stillness as well. Yoga is meditation and movement. But in a meditative practice, we don't know what's going to happen. And we're there for it. And we think, well, can I stay grounded? Can I stay with my breath? Can I stay balanced here and now? Can I be here now? Can I focus on that? Can I focus on what is, not what ifs? Although what ifs can be a lot of fun. I mean, it's food for your brain, right? What if this happens? What if that happens? But it helps to um, continue to drop back in the terminology of meditation, dropping into your meditation practice establishes a deeper understanding of what is, and then from there we can, experiment with what ifs if we want, because then we're in control. The what ifs are not driving the narrative. There's a note card on my wall that says, "Are you sure?" And I have to ask myself that a lot. Are you sure? Because fortunately, the answer is no, I'm not. I think, are you sure that that's the truth? Are you sure that that's 100% correct? Would you bet everything that you own on that? And it's actually kind of a relief to go, oh, no, I'm not entirely sure. That's great. That gives me space to um, relax. That gives me space to recognize that there's other ways to interpret what may be happening. And maybe you are accurate in your assessment of a particular situation or person or, uh, whatever you may be dealing with. You might be accurate, but again, just like the theory that we never remember something correctly, and the more we try, the more distorted it gets. That can be a bit of a losing game. There's a benefit of meditation where you transform your emotions, or rather, your behavior, your relationship to various emotions gets transformed. I've heard it termed emotional alchemy. And alchemy is a mythological practice where you turn metal into gold. Someone who practices alchemy is called an alchemist. And there's very little, if any, science that shows that that's actually possible. But the practice is thousands of years old, right? And the idea of taking metal and turning it into gold, in many ways, that's what we do with our emotions when we meditate. We notice these strong, adverse, turbulent, challenging emotions, and we just allow them to be. And in doing that, we break the cycles that we have had with these emotions, many of which don't serve us, many of which are rooted in the past. And you know, it can be downright dangerous how we deal with some of these emotions if we're not careful, if we're not mindful. And so by sitting, by being here now, by focusing on what is, it gives us the opportunity to interpret whatever the present moment is giving us in a way that we might not be used to. And then with enough practice, we are quite used to that. And we notice that our relationship to certain emotions, certain thoughts, certain cycles, certain patterns, we start to pick all of that out. We start to notice it. We start to look deeply and think, oh, wow, okay, I actually have more agency in deciding how I wish to interpret and deal with this emotion. And in doing that, our emotions with enough practice can be transformed. And I speak from experience, a lot of experience of emotions that I thought I'm never going to get over this. This is too painful. This is too dark. This is too intense. I'm never going to be able to get over this. And with practice, it's changed. And I've taken what at one point felt like the worst imaginable feeling or situation, and I've turned it into something that has given me more depth, has given me more perspective, and I find beauty in those emotions, in those memories, in those events. I can find beauty in that because I have sat with it long enough to think, well, there's actually other ways to deal with this, and I don't have to be scared all the time about this. If I take enough time and look at it, emotions are like shadows. If you look at a shadow, eventually it starts to change. Eventually it starts to move. Eventually the angle and shape of the shadow starts to change. And really, we could say that the past is shadows, it's emotional shadows. Stephen King talks about the past being like ghosts, and a really interesting and kind of cool introduction to his novel, The Shining. But um, it doesn't have to be spooky, but we can think of the past as something insubstantial, in the sense that, whoa, this emotion feels totally dangerous, totally um, terrifying. Well, are you sure? I mean, it feels that way, but are you 100% sure that that's the only way to experience this emotion? And in doing that, we're taking something metal and turning it into gold. Emotional alchemy, the practice of emotional alchemy. And that really is the power of this practice. And obviously, um, the more time we put into it, the more we get out of it. And it's important to not try too hard. In TM or transcendental meditation, it's effortless. That's the whole, it's designed to be like that. So very gentle, easy, effortless practice. Other styles of meditation might be more active or more interactive, depending on what you have. But I think the principle is the same: stopping, getting still, looking deeply, focusing on what is instead of, or as opposed to what ifs, and being here now and continuing to draw your awareness back to the now. That's where everything exists. That's where the work lies. That's where the understanding is. Understanding being the fruit of meditation, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, and that's that's where it all comes together. That's where it all comes together. Just being here now, and we have the capacity to really deepen and strengthen the practice of being here now, which is what we do when we sit down to meditate. 13 minutes. Find a comfortable seated position. Take a few deep breaths, and we'll just be here now. Take a deep breath. Let it go. Whenever you're ready, gently blink your eyes open. Eckhart Tolle, in the introduction to his book, The Power of Now, tells a story about a man who goes into town and he sees a beggar sitting on a box. The beggar asks the man for some money. The man says, I don't have any money, but what's in the box? The beggar says, oh, I don't know. I've just been sitting on it for years. The man says, well, let's look inside, see what's in the box. They open up the box and it's just all gold. um, in the context of emotional alchemy, which is a practice that we developed through steady, consistent meditation practice, it gives us the potential to be sitting on a landmine of gold. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, memories, things like that. We can all use that to go deeper into our practice, to understand it in a different way, in a way that really serves us and focuses on the impermanence of all things. Take that as a gift. Um, we do that by being here now and focusing not on what ifs, but rather bringing all our awareness to what is. That's the practice. I want to thank you as always for sharing your practice with me. Great to see you. Enjoy your week. Take care.